I can remember it like it was today. It was 1990, and I found myself in a dark alley about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, a duffel bag, $200,000, money that belonged to me and my friends. And as I look back, it was a deal that should have been made closer to the afternoon. But nothing was going as planned. It was a lot of what ifs, why, like why we got to meet at the McDonald's on 35th and Grant, why we can't just have a location, why were we meeting at just a location that we had no knowledge. This is a situation that I was put in because I was chasing what I considered the American dream. So 1 o'clock in the morning, a duffel bag. I was in an alley behind a white garage, black roof, on 37th and Monroe Street. It was late, so I was given strict instructions. It was a no-knock policy. I was informed to crack the door, hesitate, and then walk in. So that's just what I did. I took a step, I cracked the door, and I slowly walked in. When I walked in, I glanced at the situation, and I seen 4 or 5 guys. All of them had guns in hand. I didn't think about grabbing my P-89 Ruger. I knew that was suicidal. So I took the duffel bag off my back, grabbed it with both hands, and I tossed it over to the guy. And I can remember these words. I said, it's $200,000. You can count it. It's all cash. I ain't playing no games. He looked at me. He glanced back at the money. He opened the duffel bag, flipped through a couple stacks, and he nodded to the guy to the right. I looked over, and I'll never forget this vision. The guy came up, 2 brown paper bags, and it had the words Aldi, from the Aldi's grocery store. And my thinking was, I know this guy not about to give me 8 kilos in Aldi bags. But I never said a word. I grabbed the bags, and I actually never looked in them, because if what was in the bag wasn't what I thought, I was dead anyway. That one little gesture. So I grabbed the bags, and I left out the door. 33 years later, I'm telling this story. Good evening. My name is Charles Jalal. I was born and raised in Gary, Indiana. And thinking back, I mean, growing up in the height of the 90s, when Gary was considered the murder port capital, I don't have a lot of bad memories. I had a few incidents, even caught a bullet in my head, refused to get it removed because I didn't want the scar. But I don't look at that as a bad memory because I still made it out with my money. And I know that was crazy as hell for me to think like that. But that was my thinking. I consider myself a successful drug dealer at the age of 18 years old. At the age of 19 years old, I had it all. I had anything my eyes can feed, whether it was cars, whether it was jewelry, whether it was boats. I mean, if I wasn't in Gary, I wouldn't even mention this, but I even had a pet lion. I was completely living out of touch, completely. And my American dream soon became American nightmare with the help of the FBI, DEA, and ATF. And that's when it landed me in another situation. And when I look at that situation, and I put everything I ever owned, everything I ever bought on the scale, because I've used a scale all my life. So I measure everything by the scale. Even to this day, I measure my education and economics versus my entertainment on the scale at the end of the week. And when I look at the life I live on a scale compared to the time I did, it was a very grave imbalance, because it was nothing I ever bought that was worth spending 6 years of my 20s in prison. My whole entire 30s never ever seen a day free on this earth, and 4 years in my 40s. So when I look at the lifestyle I live, it wasn't worth it. So I was sitting in prison, serving an 18-year sentence the second time. And I was working in the law library on my first book, which was called Continuing Criminal Enterprise. It was actually an autobiography. And I reasoned with how the fact I was locked up, why I was locked up. I blamed every certain person or situation except myself. So when I began to write this book, and I began to turn the pages, and write the pages, and write the pages, I stopped and it hit me. I said, what is positive about my life? Is this really a legacy that I want to leave for people to read? Is this really a legacy that I want to leave my grandkids? So me being goal-orientated, me being strong and ambitious, me pushing on through, I finished the book. But to this day, it's a book that I never published. That's around the time that I met this brother that is standing with my wife. He was a brother that was in prison with me that was often in the law library. He was in the law library doing work. I was in the law library writing books. So one day we crossed paths. And he said that, young brother, how you doing? I always see you in here. And I said, I'm doing fine. And how you doing? And he said, likewise. And I told him about the first book I wrote. And he asked, what was it about? And I said, it was about my life story. But I said, there's nothing really positive about it. So I don't really know if I even want to publish it. And I'll never forget these words. He told me to rewrite it. And I was like, what you mean rewrite it? He was just like, he said, rewrite your history. And I was like, how do I rewrite my history? I said, what I've done is already what I've done. I am what I am. And that's when he gave me this for my first book. And I'll never forget this book. The book was called Now About Civilization. And as I began to read this book, I realized that I was not who I thought I was. I was not born to be a drug dealer. I was not born to chase things. That things wasn't the more important things, that things wasn't the most important things in life. That people were way more important than things. So as I began to read several books, hundreds of books, or close to hundreds of books, I realized that I was a product of my environment, that I had became what I call American made, that I had to relearn myself to know myself. And as I did so, my perspective started to change. I realized that it was nothing I could buy, nothing I could drive, nothing I could wear that superseded my mentality, that superseded my mind, that I didn't need things to feel like I was a great human being, but that my ancestors was great, that I am with my ancestors, that I was just operating on a low frequency, that I wasn't operating on the higher level that was in me. And when I began to read and understand and learn thyself, I began to get control of my thought. And that was one of the greatest things I can do, because I never knew that the mind had a mind of its own. But that's a true statement, because my mind had me living crazy as heck. I thought I was God myself, but I wasn't. It was my lower self. But when I was able to tap into that higher God-given creativity, then I was able to see things from a total different perspective. I was able to see that I was way more greater than I ever thought. And as I studied and began to understand that my purpose was bigger than selling drugs, my mentality began to shift. And I began to wonder, what is my purpose? Why am I here? I wasn't here to sell drugs. I wasn't here to be unconscious. I wasn't here to chase things. And once I began to learn that and understand that and shape my mindset and my reality and get control of my thoughts, then I was able to find my purpose. And I realized that my purpose was to help people. My purpose was to be able to not let the succeeding generation go through what I went through. I began to understand the importance of history. And a lot of people ask me when I used to teach, like, well, what does history got to do with now? History has everything to do with now. If history is not important, then don't tell your daughter, don't get pregnant at 12 or 13 years old. Don't tell them the mistakes you made. Don't tell your son, don't break in cars, don't rob, don't steal, don't drug deal. Don't tell them nothing. And people will say, oh, no, that's different. No, it's not different. Because that's the same thing our ancestors was trying to tell us. Those are the same mistakes that they was trying to keep us from making. But when you don't realize where you're from, when you don't realize what's in you, when you can't tap into the gifts that you have, when you operating on a frequency so low that you consider yourself dogs, what's up, dog? Or you consider yourself an end, then it's hard to grasp the reality of what a person is saying. But when you look at the work and how great of lineage that you come from, you realize, like I realized, that, man, I wasn't thinking. There's no way I was thinking if I'm from this bloodline. Because I am a product of that lineage. And I know that my people, my ancestors, they were able to bring the heavens down to earth. And you have to realize that just like people quick to say, it's the devil in you. That boy got the devil in him. When you tell them that it's a God in you, then they want to think you all spooked out, or they just can't understand it. But if you are your father, then it's a God in you. It's a God in you. That's the reality of the situation. No one need to tell you that it's a God in you if you are your father. It's just that you're not operating on the level of that God because you have will. And you will be operating on a lower level spirit, which is satanic, if that's the spirit you want to operate on. But you have the level to operate on that God that's in you. Each and every one of us. But you have to tap into that because you have a choice. When I went to Egypt and I seen the pyramids and I seen Ramesses II and all the great things that my ancestors done, I clearly understood why they said aliens done this. I mean, I understood it. When I walked up in them temples, when I walked up in those monuments, I said, it's no way possible that 7,000 years ago that paint looked like that on the wall. I can't paint a house and it lasts like that in 5 years. 7,000 years BC. What the heck was they doing? We talking about the Sears Tower and Trump Towers. How was they carving whole mountains? How was they creating whole living quarters? The pyramid is not just tons of rocks. It was living quarters. It was universities. It was study halls. It was scientific chambers in there. It wasn't just stones or pebbles. So when you realize this, then you begin to understand that your purpose is bigger than what you thought it was. You realize that it's not about me. You realize that it's not even about my last name or my so-called family title. Because family is only a title and blood is only a substance if you're not living up to that true meaning. And you have to look beyond the ones who have your last name, because every child is your child. Every human is your family. Because the reality of the situation is, it's brothers and sisters you will never know because of the atrocities that happen to us. It's voices you will never speak, clothes you will never wear, music you will never hear. You think your family is solely concentrated to that last name you have? No. Why you think when we did have conflict with the Tutsis or Hutus or the Ashantis and the Zulus, that was 1 million families against another 1 million. That was 800,000 against another 800,000. We've been systematically programmed to families being so-called names and titles. when we all the same people? Why can every other race of people come over here from a foreign country and all of them collectively work together and they get right, but we still can't get right and we've been here? We can't worry about nobody to come to save us. Surprise. Ain't nobody coming to save us. I hate to say it. I really do. But if we don't save ourselves, no one is coming to save us. But we find every little thing to divide each other, whether it's state, block, gang religion. We find every little thing we can to keep us apart. And we expect other people to be patient with us when we won't even be patient with ourselves. But at the same time, when you know your history, when you know that a race been stripped of an entire culture, then you know that your people dealing with culture shock. We know that we're in an alienated foreign land that's not giving us adequate resources, that's not giving us a hand up, that wants to continue to give us a hand out so they can control us in every area in science of life. And that's why we at the bottom of every area of science of life, whether it's entertainment, education, economics, law, labor, war. Our race of people are at the bottom. But as soon as we get a couple things, we isolate our family and we say, you know what? My kid got 4 bikes. It's not my duty to get that kid down the street a bike. He's not of my family. He's not of my descent. But we're going to be held accountable for that. That's what you don't understand. We're going to be held accountable for that. Your children are going to be held accountable for that. We can't just continue to isolate ourselves and accumulate what we feel is best for us and not worry about everyone else. And that's what made me start Prime Boxing Association, which is an at-risk youth boxing gym where I deal with DCL foster kids, juveniles, at-risk youth, where they could come to a gym and get education, where they could come to a gym and get fed, where they could come to a gym and worry about nutrition and health fitness, where they actually got the opportunity to be able to go pro if they want to fight pro because we USA Boxing sanctioned. I refuse to put my name on another $100,000 car and my baby's out there dying in the street. I refuse. And with the help of my wife, we continue to help not just children, but we help adults. We help the homeless. Every week we feed the homeless on our food trucks. We feed the homeless with an organization called the Misfits, because you got to understand that everyone is not in that situation because they decided not to become the one in life. When you hear the stories, a lot of them was actually threw away. A lot of them was actually veterans. And we primarily house veterans in our church, in our monastery. We feed over 200 or 300 people a week in our food pantry because it's not about big eyes and little U's. And it's not easy because it's a heavy burden when you care about people that you don't even know. It's easy to love your child. It's easy to love your own sibling. It's easy to love your cousins, your nephews, and all that. But when you love people you don't even know, when you want more for a person than they want for themselves, when you fighting and struggling like, man, come on, you can do it. Okay, he sold a coat, but that don't mean I'm not going to give him another coat. He sold a tent. He sold a blanket. I still got to give him another blanket. I still got to give him another sleeping bag. Because that's my duty. I can't worry about what he's doing or what he's struggling with. I can't prejudge him for that. And it seems like a person doing a lot when another person is doing nothing. But all that we doing and that we work on doing, it's still like putting a Band-Aid on the bullet wound. Because I can't just say, let's go and take every homeless off the street. I can't just say, okay, I'm going to feed every family across America. So sometimes it's hard. It's hard when you putting that energy out there and you fighting and you trying to make a difference. And you have people that's not doing nothing, but sitting around worrying about things, thinking things are the most important things in life, thinking that you got to have a certain car or a certain watch or you got to have a certain house to feel like somebody. I've been in a shoebox for 20 years of my life. I've been drinking river water in a prison for 20 years of my life. I've been eating stuff that'll make a billy goat puke until it got to the point where I stopped eating dang near anything in there. So I don't need a lot to survive. I don't need a lot at all. I can make it off the basic necessities. So I can't tell or prejudge anyone for what they drive, for what they have, because their greed may not have been my greed. You know, they didn't risk 20 years in prison to get what they got. They went about it another way. So I'm not saying don't have nice things. I'm saying what was wrong with me. I'm saying my character defects. I'm saying what I had to change in me. I'm saying the purpose I had to find because I wasn't who I thought I was. I had to learn thyself to know thyself, to know who I am today. And that's why I'm here speaking. To my brothers, to my sisters, no strangers. I don't need to know your last name. I don't need to know your first name. I know you're a human being. I know you bleed just like I bleed. I know you struggle just like I struggle. I know you're going through the same things that I'm going through. We got to start giving each other a hand up. It has nothing to do with where you from, how you look, neighborhood, or none of that. It's about uplifting humanity. People often say, why is all these mass shootings? Why is everyone just killing each other? Usually it was, okay, it was just grown up husband and wife, he went to the whatever, or it was ex-employee. But now it's not an ex-employee. It's not just grown up husband and wife. It's people that done purely lost hope. It's people that's saying, you know what? I'm irrelevant in life anyway, so why am I going to go kill myself in the closet? And no one never cared when I'm going to go out here and kill everybody that I feel that didn't care about me and then take myself out. And they can't understand that because you have to realize you're going to be held accountable. Just like a bully. Every kid ain't finna go in the closet and hang themselves because they're getting bullied. Some kids going up to the school with that gun. And then you wonder why your kid got shot. Even though your kid wasn't the one bullying that kid. Because you still gonna deal with the reality of the situation of that kid being neglected. It's not hard to understand why we robbing, why we killing. It's not hard to see why we got all these mass shootings. It's not hard at all. It's not economically motivated. It's just purely losing hope. It's just purely feeling like no one cares about me on this earth. No one cares about me in this world. And that's a dangerous mindset. Trust me. We from Gary, Indiana. We know the mentality of people that feel they don't have nothing to lose. That's the worst person you can ever deal with. That's the worst person you could ever have some problems with. Because while you going to your business and you going to your big house, he watching you. He don't own nothing. So he in a stolen car. He creeping around. That's the most dangerous person you can deal with, is a person with nothing to lose. And that's the mentality that we have to change. I'm not saying it's meant for everybody to be a Malcolm or Martin. I'm not saying that it's meant for everybody to go out there and save the world. I'm not, because it's a heavy burden. It might just be meant for you just to stay focused and deal with your child. And your child might become that Mountain, that Martin, or that Obama. But you have to put time in our children. We have to not let them feel that things are the most important things in life. We have to change that mindset. Because all we doing is perpetuating the problem. perpetuating their esoteric agenda. Our children are not acting the way they're acting because it's just normal. It's a system. I hate to say it. It ain't no conspiracy theory. It's a system. These kids are being programmed. These kids are being American made. And with that, I thank you. Peace.